You're sitting at a red light. It's late. You're tired. Maybe you had one drink. Maybe you didn't. Doesn't matter. The light turns green. You go. And then you see them. Flashing lights in your rear view. Your heart starts pounding. Your hands feel cold. And in that exact moment, without even realizing it, you're about to make one small mistake. One tiny, innocent-sounding sentence. And that mistake, it can legally destroy your entire case before the officer even gets to your window. That one decision changes everything. Most people get this wrong instantly, and they never even know it. But here's what no one tells you. What you say in the first 10 seconds of a traffic stop is more powerful than anything your lawyer says in court later. It can take away your defenses. It can hand the prosecution their entire case on a silver platter. So what is that mistake? And more importantly, how do you avoid it? Stick with me for the next few minutes. Because by the end of this, you'll know exactly what to say, exactly what not to say, and why most drivers accidentally confess before they've even been asked a single question. Let's go back to that moment. You're pulled over. The officer is walking up to your car. You're nervous. You want to be polite. You want to seem cooperative. So you roll down your window, you smile, and you say the 7 words that just legally shot you in the foot. Good evening, officer. How are you? Sounds nice, right? Sounds respectful. Here's the problem. In that one sentence, you just did 3 things you don't realize. First, you voluntarily created a conversational relationship. Second, you signaled that you're nervous enough to overcompensate. And third, and this is the killer, you just gave the officer permission to start treating this as a social interaction instead of a legal one. And that's where this goes wrong. Because the moment it becomes social, you lose. You start chatting. You start explaining. You start defending yourself. And every word out of your mouth is evidence. Every single one. Let me show you what actually happens next in the wrong scenario. I want you to see it. The officer reaches your window. You've already said good evening. He doesn't say it back. He just looks at you. License and registration. You fumble in the glove box. Papers everywhere. Your hands are shaking. You finally hand him over. Do you know why I pulled you over? And here it is. This is the trap door. You panic. Your brain races. Was I speeding? Did I swerve? Did my brake light go out? So you start guessing. I might have been going a little fast back there. Or worse, I only had 1 beer. Stop right there. In that moment, you just did the officer's entire job for him. You admitted to a violation. You gave him probable cause. And you voluntarily offered information he never even asked for. You just built his case for him. He didn't ask if you were speeding. He didn't ask if you'd been drinking. He asked one question. Do you know why I pulled you over? And you said, yeah, I was speeding. Or I had 1 beer. Game over. From that point forward, nothing your lawyer does can put that toothpaste back in the tube. You admitted it. On video. On their dash cam. On their body cam. And you did it with a smile, trying to be polite. Now let me show you what the right scenario looks like. Because it's completely different. And it starts with 1 word. You pull over. You turn off the engine. You roll down your window halfway. Not all the way. You put both hands on the steering wheel where the officer can see them. Your interior light is on if it's dark. The officer approaches. You don't say a word first. You wait. He says, license and registration. You say, officer, I'm going to reach for my wallet in my back pocket. It has my license. My registration is in the glove box. I need to lean across to open it. How would you like me to proceed? That's it. That's the exact phrase. Notice what you didn't do. You didn't ask how his night was going. You didn't apologize. You didn't guess why you were pulled over. You simply acknowledged that you're about to move. You told him where you're reaching, and you asked for instruction. This does 2 things. First, it keeps the officer calm because you're being predictable and transparent. Second, and this is more important, you just established that this is a legal interaction, not a social one. Now he says, slowly reach for your wallet. Let me see your hands. You do it. You hand over your license and registration, and then comes the question. Do you know why I pulled you over? This is the moment. This is where most people lose everything. Here's what you say. Say it exactly like this. Calm, not robotic. It's not confrontational, just calm, officer. I'm sure there's a reason, but I'm going to respectfully decline to answer that question. Pause. That's the line. I'm going to respectfully decline to answer that question. Most people hear that and think, but won't that make him suspicious? No. It makes him aware that you know your rights. And here's what he already knows that you don't. He already decided whether to give you a ticket or let you go before he even left his car. Before he ever walked up to your window. He decided based on the violation he observed and his department's policies. Your answers don't change his mind. They only give him more evidence to use against you. That's the secret most drivers never understand. You cannot talk your way out of a ticket, but you can absolutely talk your way into one. Or worse, into something much bigger. Think about that for a second. How many times have you heard someone say, I was polite, I cooperated, and I still got a ticket? Of course you did. Politeness is an illegal defense. Cooperation isn't a get-out-of-jail-free card. The officer isn't your friend. He's not your judge. He's a collector of evidence. That's his job. And your job, in that moment, is to not hand him any more evidence than he already has. This goes back to those first few seconds, the moment you roll down your window, the moment you open your mouth. That's where the entire trajectory of your case is set. And here's something else, something most lawyers won't tell you because it sounds too simple. You don't have to answer their questions. That's it. You are not required to answer, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" You are not required to answer, "Have you been drinking?" You are not required to answer, "Where are you coming from?" None of it. The only things you are legally required to provide during a traffic stop are your license, your registration, and proof of insurance. That's it. Everything else is voluntary. But here's where people get trapped. They think if they refuse to answer, the officer will get angry, or they'll be arrested for obstruction, or it'll look guilty. Let me be very clear, refusing to answer a question is not obstruction. Sitting silently is not a crime. Saying, "I'm going to respectfully decline to answer that question," is not probable cause for anything. What is probable cause is when you say, "I only had 2 beers." Now they have reasonable suspicion to investigate further. Now they have a reason to ask you to step out of the car. Now they have a reason to administer field sobriety tests, which, by the way, are designed for you to fail. And here's the part that should scare you. Field sobriety tests are voluntary. You can legally decline them. But most people don't know that. So they get out, they stand on one leg, they walk in a straight line, and every single thing they do wrong gets recorded and used against them in court, even if you're completely sober. Because those tests are subjective. The officer decides if you failed. Not a machine, not a blood test. A human being who already suspects you of something. So here's the exact phrase for that moment. If they ask you to step out and perform field sobriety tests, you say, "Officer, I'm going to respectfully decline field sobriety tests. I haven't been drinking, but I don't consent to any testing." That's it. Now will they sometimes arrest you anyway? Yes, that's possible, but here's the difference. If you refuse the tests, they have to arrest you based on their observation alone, not based on a video of you wobbling on one leg, and that's much harder for a prosecutor to win. If you take the tests and fail, the prosecutor has a video. They have evidence. Your lawyer has to fight that evidence. If you refuse, your lawyer can fight the officer's opinion. Those are 2 completely different battles, and one of them is winnable. Let me give you a real scenario. A friend of mine, I'm not naming names, got pulled over at 2 in the morning. He'd had 2 drinks over 4 hours. He was legally fine, but he was nervous. Officer asks, "Have you been drinking tonight?" He says, "I had 2 beers earlier." That's all it took. The officer asks him to step out. He does the field sobriety tests. He's sober. He passes every single one perfectly, but the officer still arrests him for DUI. Why? Because on the dashcam video, when the officer asked if he'd been drinking, he said 2 beers, and in that officer's mind, any alcohol plus late night equals DUI. He spent the night in jail. He paid $5,000 for a lawyer. The charges were eventually dropped. But the damage was done. The arrest is on his record. The mugshot is online. And it all started with 3 words. 2 beers earlier. Now let me show you what he should have said. "Officer, have you been drinking tonight?" Response: "Officer, I'm going to respectfully decline to answer that question." That's it. No lie, no admission, no evidence, just a calm, polite refusal. Would he still have been arrested? Maybe. Some officers will arrest anyone who refuses to answer. But without the admission, the prosecutor has almost nothing. And most prosecutors won't file charges on almost nothing. That's the game. And most people don't even know they're playing. If this is helping you understand something most people never learn, subscribe. Because we break this down in simple, real-world terms every week. What to say, what not to say, and why the smartest people stay quiet when everyone else is talking. So let's talk about what you actually do during a traffic stop. Because knowing what not to say is only half of it. You also need a system. A simple, repeatable pattern that protects you even when you're scared. Here it is. 4 steps. Memorize them. Step 1. Stop and prepare. Pull over safely. Turn off the engine. Turn on your interior light if it's dark. Roll your window down halfway. Put both hands on the steering wheel. Take a breath. Step 2. Provide only what's required. When they ask for license and registration, hand them over. But announce your movements first. My license is in my back pocket. I'm going to reach for it now. This keeps everyone calm and shows you're not a threat. Step 3. Decline to answer. When they ask questions, any questions beyond your ID, say the line. "Officer, I'm going to respectfully decline to answer that question." Say it calmly. Say it once. Then stay quiet. Step 4. Do not consent to searches. If they ask to search your car, say this: "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." You don't need a reason. You don't need to be hiding anything. You just say no. If they have probable cause, they'll search anyway. But if they don't, and you didn't consent, your lawyer can get any evidence they find thrown out. That's the system. It takes about 10 seconds to execute, and it protects you better than any amount of polite conversation ever could. Now, let me address the voice in your head right now. But won't this make me look guilty? No, it makes you look informed. And here's what actual cops will tell you. Not on camera, but off the record. They respect drivers who know their rights, because those drivers are predictable. They're not erratic. They're not emotional. They're not confessing to things they didn't do. The drivers who scare officers are the ones who are unpredictable, the ones who talk too much, the ones who move without announcing it, the ones who reach into glove boxes without saying a word. Being calm, being clear, and declining to answer questions doesn't make you look guilty. It makes you look like someone who's been advised by a lawyer. And that's exactly what you are right now. You've been advised. Let me show you one more scenario. This one happens more often than you think. You're pulled over, you haven't done anything wrong, your registration is current, your license is valid. You weren't speeding, you weren't swerving, but the officer says he pulled you over for a broken taillight. You know your taillight works, you checked it last week. What do? Most people argue. My taillight is fine, you're wrong. Don't do that. Here's the exact phrase. Officer, I understand, I'll get that fixed. That's it? You don't argue? You don't correct him, you just acknowledge and move on. Why? Because arguing doesn't change the stop, it only escalates the tension. And if you're right about your taillight, you can fight the ticket in court. You don't fight it on the side of the road. The side of the road is where you collect information. It's not where you win, so you take the ticket, you stay calm, and then you go to court with a photo of your working taillight. That's how you win. Not by arguing with an officer who's already decided to write the ticket. This is the difference between emotional drivers and strategic drivers. Emotional drivers react, strategic drivers respond. Emotional drivers say, I only had one beer. Strategic drivers say, I'm going to respectfully decline to answer that question. Emotional drivers say, go ahead and search, I have nothing to hide. Strategic drivers say, I do not consent to any searches. Emotional drivers argue about taillights on the shoulder of the highway. Strategic drivers take the ticket and win in court. Which one do you want to be? Let me reinforce something here, because this is where people get confused. Declining to answer questions is not the same as lying. You are never ever advised to lie to a police officer. Lying can be a crime. Lying is dangerous. Lying destroys your credibility, but you don't have to lie. You just don't have to answer. There's a difference between saying, I haven't been drinking when you have, which is a lie, and saying, I'm going to respectfully decline to answer that question, which is the truth. You are declining to answer. That's not deception. That's your right. And here's what the Supreme Court has said about this. Remaining silent cannot be used as evidence of guilt. It's right there in the Constitution. The Fifth Amendment protects you from being forced to incriminate yourself. But here's the catch. You have to actually remain silent. Or at least you have to invoke your right to remain silent. Saying, I'm going to respectfully decline to answer is invoking that right. Staying quiet after that is exercising it. Most people don't know that just staying silent isn't enough. You actually have to say that you're remaining silent. Otherwise, a prosecutor can argue that you were just being uncooperative, not exercising your rights. So you say the words, I'm going to respectfully decline to answer that question. Those words change everything. Let's go back to that first moment again. The red light, the flashing lights, the pounding heart. You now know something 99% of drivers don't know. You know that the first 10 seconds determine everything. You know that being polite doesn't mean answering questions. You know that the officer's job is to collect evidence, not to be your friend. And you know the exact words to say. Officer, I'm going to respectfully decline to answer that question. Say it calmly, say it once, then stop talking. That one small decision to stay quiet instead of explaining, to decline instead of confess, that decision can save your case. It can save you thousands in legal fees, it can keep you out of jail, it can keep your record clean, all from one sentence. Most people will never know this. They'll keep rolling down their windows, keep apologizing, keep guessing why they were pulled over, keep handing over evidence with a smile. But you don't have to be one of them. You just have to remember those 10 seconds. And the one thing you don't say. Here's your recap. A simple framework you can remember even when you're nervous. 1. Hands on the wheel, window halfway. Announce your movements. 2. License, registration, insurance, nothing else. 3. When they ask questions, say the line. I'm going to respectfully decline to answer that question. 4. If they ask to search, say no, I do not consent. 5. Stay calm. Stay quiet. Fight it in court, not on the side of the road. That's it. That's the entire system. No legal degree required, no memorizing statutes, just 5 steps and 2 sentences. Most people will spend hours watching videos about fancy legal tactics they'll never remember in the moment. You just need these 5 steps, because in a traffic stop, simple wins, quiet wins. Nothing wins. One last thing, if you take nothing else from this, take this. That moment of panic when the lights come on, that's normal. That's human. That's your body flooding with adrenaline, because you've been conditioned your whole life to fear police interactions. But here's what they didn't teach you. That fear is manageable. You don't have to let it control your mouth. You can feel your heart pounding and still keep your lips together. You can be scared and still be strategic. You can be respectful and still decline to answer. That's not weakness, that's control. And control is exactly what wins in this situation. Not aggression, not friendliness, not confessions, just calm, quiet control. So next time those lights come on, and if you drive long enough, they will, you have a choice. You can be the driver who panics, explains, apologizes, and hands over their entire case in the first 10 seconds. Or you can be the driver who takes a breath, puts their hands on the wheel, and says 4 simple words. I respectfully decline to answer. That one decision changes everything. What would you say in that moment? Think about it. Because your answer might be the most important one you ever give.